our Deeper Learning series number 3 on nominations and recruitment. We are really excited that you are here with us tonight. I am Heather Ippolito, and on the other end, on the other side of town is
Sue Solomon, your Council VP for Membership.
Awesome. So we are going to talk tonight all about the nomination process, the timeline for it, how it works. We're going to talk about the nominating committee, and then we're going to talk a little bit about recruitment. We're not really going to get that far into elections today because that is a whole nother deeper learning series that we're going to do in January. So I am going to share my screen. And this is always the fun part, to figure out if I remember how to do this. All right. Sue, can you see the presentation?
I certainly can.
Awesome. All right. So welcome to our 3rd Deeper Learning series of the year. We are excited that you are here. Like I said, we have a full agenda for the evening. So first, let's meet our presenters. I am Heather Ippolito, Santa Clarita Valley Council President, and I have served in lots and lots of different positions, but by far my favorite that I've ever done is being parliamentarian at the unit, council and district level.
And I'm Sue Solomon. I've been involved with PTA for 25 years, and I've served on council as president and district PTA as president. I've served on state PTA as a board of director for education and national PTA on resolutions. But my priority and my most favorite part is always the council part, because I get to help my neighbors in achieving their goals.
And we're so glad that Sue is our neighbor. All right. I think this was me, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the timeline for nominations and elections, this is something that you do need to pull out your bylaws to look at. If you don't have a copy of your bylaws, you can send me an email and I can probably get them to you. But your nomination committee must be elected at least 2 months prior to your annual election meeting. And I say at least, you should probably give yourself a little bit more time than that, just because it is an involved process. But where you go in your bylaws to find that is Article 5, Section 3B. The report of your nominating committee, which means the people that they are putting forward on the slate, needs to be published at least 28 days prior to the annual election meeting. And when we say published, that could be something like you put it on your Facebook page, you put it on a window in the office, you could put it on your website. You could, if you have a meeting scheduled 28 days prior to the annual election meeting, you could present it at an association meeting, but it needs to be in places where parents will see it at least 28 days prior to your annual election meeting. And when are you going to have this annual election meeting? Well, you can find that in your bylaws as well in Article 5, Section 3G, or it's also in Section 7 of Article 5. So you need to take your calendar, find your annual election meeting, go back 28 days, mark in your calendar when that slate needs to be posted, and then go, as far as you need out to give your nomination committee at least 2 months. I would suggest probably closer to 3 to give your nominating committee enough time to find the right people and get that slate published 28 days prior.
The nomination process is probably the most important process in your PTA. It is probably the most important committee that you can serve on because it has a tremendous influence on the future for your PTA. So the people that serve on the PTA create these legacies, they create traditions and practices that your PTAs become known for, that are unique to your school, community, and your PTA. So when you are looking at potential candidates for that, for your PTA, you want to have people on there that their work is going to have a long-lasting impact in a positive way on your PTA and represents the values of your community.
All right, so this is very important to me. Usually when I'm doing trainings, I make people chant it with me. The nominating committee is elected. They are not selected or pitted. They are elected by your association at least 60 days prior to your annual election meeting. Like I said, we usually say give yourself a little more time. Oh, all Sue's dogs are here too. That's great. You may not elect your nominating committee at an executive board meeting. This has to happen. The dogs want to say something too, and I like it.
They're barking about the nominating committee. I think that's
well, because they know it needs to be elected and not selected, so they are all on board with me. You must do this in an association meeting, and it must be in your minutes. So please make sure that you are electing your nominating committee at your association meeting. Now, how many people you elect, that is based completely on your bylaws. Some schools elect 5 members and 2 or 3 alternates. Some schools elect 3 members and 2 or 3 alternates. Again, you need to check your bylaws to find out that exact number. And if you can't find it in your bylaws, you could always send me an email. I am happy to look that information up for you. I can send you a screenshot on the phone. But it is very, very important to make sure that your election process is going smoothly, and so that nothing can be contested or you have any problems later, to make sure that you are electing that nominating committee at an association meeting. So for some schools like mine, that means that we're electing the nominating committee this month. We have a meeting next week, and we're going to be electing that nominating committee. And people are thinking, wow, November, that feels so early. But the way that our association meetings work out, this is the one that works so that we have enough time for the nominating committee to do their job. So make sure that you are looking at your bylaws so that you have enough time to get all that done. Now, when the elections happen at your association meeting, I get calls from parliamentarians all the time saying, well, Heather, what do we say? Because there's a lovely script for elections where it walks everybody through all their parts, but there is no script for electing the nominating committee that I've ever seen. So you go to Article 5 in your bylaws, and I've taken a screenshot of it here, and your parliamentarian or your designee, if you don't have a parliamentarian, would read Section 3, A through G, so that everybody in the meeting is clear. So this particular school, you can see in Section 3C, they have 5 people elected to their nominating committee with 2 alternates. Now, the thing about the alternates is they do not come to meetings unless one of the 5 is unable to come. If one of those elected 5 to the nominating committee is unable to fulfill their duties, the alternate becomes one of those 5. And that person who missed that one meeting is now off the nominating committee. So that's really important to know as well. It's also really important to know that you cannot serve for 2 consecutive years. That's 3D. And if you look at 3G, that tells you at this school in particular, their annual election meeting is in March, which means that depending on when their meetings are, they're probably going to be appointing their nominating committee either in December or January. They're going to be electing that nominating committee. All right, Sue, it's you.
So the nominating committee is a unique and special committee with meetings on their own time. They do not meet inside of an association meeting or at a PTA executive board meeting. They meet on time set by them with their chairpersons, and they take minutes from their meeting. The people who served on the nominating committee in the previous year are not eligible to serve in this newer year. And the president never can serve on a nominating committee. You've heard that a president is on every committee, sits on every committee, except for the nominating committee. The term for serving on the nominating committee begins when, upon election, onto the nominating committee until when the actual election for the PTA Association happens. So when you create a slate and people drop off for various reasons, you're still a committee, active committee that continues to search for the candidate that best meets the requirements and criteria for your PTA. The principal of your school serves as an advisor to the nominating committee, because in reality, there's no one more knowledgeable about parents, parent involvement, what parents are capable of at the school than the principal. So when the nominating committee meets, it should be at a time where the principal is available to attend those meetings as well. If the principal cannot attend the meeting, the principal needs to be notified as to what you're working on and who you're considering, so that he or she can offer you information that would be valuable in making that decision for the candidates. Your turn. Oh, still my turn.
No, it's you.
It's still my turn. So to serve on the nominating committee, you should be knowledgeable about PTA. So it would be not to the benefit of your PTA to nominate someone who's never served in the PTA or who doesn't have any information about what the PTA does and how it functions. So there needs to be some knowledge about the PTA. There also needs to be an awareness of potential nominees. And the best way to do that is that when people are voted on to the board, that you select people from upper grades, lower grades, people that represent the different demographics of your community. So that way you have a broader scope of an understanding of what parents would make great PTA officers. All parents would make great PTA officers, but the key here is they gotta wanna do it. They have to be willing to give the time that it takes to devote to being in the PTA and being a part of the process. And parents have to, and then you can have community members also be part of that nomination slate too, people who just want to be involved in the PTA. In order to be an officer in the PTA, it is important that whatever candidates you are considering, that the person be a member of the PTA for at least 30 days. So they can't become the nominee and then join. They really need to be a member of the PTA up front. So, and the other important thing in serving on the nominating committee is that you really have to understand confidentiality. So all the discussion that takes place at a nominating committee, when you're talking about people's qualifications, ability to serve and meet the needs of the PTA, those conversations, like anything in a human resources at a job, need to be kept confidential. So people who serve on that must be trustworthy to keep confidentiality.
And that's a really important one, because you don't want anybody getting their feelings hurt if they hear something out of context. And so that's why whatever happens in the nominating committee really does need to remain inside the nominating committee. All right, so you're at your association meeting. The parliamentarian has read that section of the bylaws. The chair of the meeting has called for nominees to the nomination committee. Isn't that funny? Nominees for the nomination committee. If you have more than the positions available, so for example, that school that I showed you, they had 5 people elected and 2 alternates. So let's say that there was 10 people who wanted to be on the nominating committee. You would have to do a ballot vote for that, and the people would list their top 7, and then the top 5 vote getters would be on the nomination committee, and the 2 next vote getters would be your alternates. So be prepared for a ballot, just in case you have lots of people coming out of the woodwork who want to be on your nominating committee. But so immediately after that has happened, your parliamentarian grabs those people and moves them off to the side. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not let them leave the room. Grab them. I've made that mistake before. Don't make the same mistake that I made. Grab them immediately, move them off to the side of the room, and you need to do the following things. Exchange their contact information. Make sure that they all know how to get a hold of each other. You need to select their chairperson. The 5 of them would look at each other and say, you would say, who among you wants to be the chair? Usually one person says, I'll do it. And usually everybody else is like, yay. But if there's more than one, you would have a quick vote and they would select their chairperson. And then you need to make sure as the parliamentarian that they schedule their first meeting. And this is really important because you need to make sure that they're starting on their task right away. If they say, oh, well, we'll call each other and we'll talk about it, you're losing momentum. They're all there. They're all in the same place right now. And so they just need to schedule their first meeting. The chairperson should be given a copy of the bylaws because that has all the different positions that you will need to fill, as well as some of the job description for those positions so that they can be informed when they're talking to the candidates. And they need to be given the contact information for the parliamentarian should they not be serving on the committee, because the parliamentarian doesn't necessarily serve on the nominating committee. They can be elected to it if they have not served the prior year, but it is not a gimme that the parliamentarian is on the nominating committee. They actually have to be elected just like everybody else. But if they're not on the nominating committee, they are a resource to the chair of the committee so that should they have any questions, where do we go to find this help? I don't really understand what the historian does. Can you give me more information? The parliamentarian would be the person who would facilitate that. It's also really helpful if they get this checklist that you can find on capta.org so that you can make sure that they're doing what they need to do. So as you check these things off, hand it to them, and then they can take it and run after you have, given them all their paperwork. All right.
So the job of the nominating committee is to find the best possible candidates for the task. Who do you think will be a great president who can reach out to the community, be friendly, be inviting, be inclusive, be helpful, mindful, respectful, and willing to be trained and learn so that he or she can be a dynamic PTA president? Who do you know that's interested in serving as treasurer, who loves finances or really wants to learn finances? Those are the questions you ask yourself. It's important that each of the people who serve on the nominating committee become familiar with the role and responsibility of the officers that you have on it, so that you can have a full understanding of what's being asked of people. It's not, oh, you can just be the chairperson of Red Ribbon Week and come to a meeting and then you're done. Or you could be the auditor and you could show up twice a year to do the audit. No, everyone who has an elected position, especially, and there are those that are appointed, have the continuing responsibility of making decisions and recommendations to the membership as to what kind of activities will be done at your school and how monies will be spent. So picking the best possible candidates to fulfill your obligations in PTA is super important. So we stated that you serve on the nominating committee from the time that you are elected on it at an association meeting until the night the election takes place to elect those people into those office positions. So you as a nominating committee need to have a great span of time, because depending on how big your board is, it could take multiple days, if not multiple weeks, to get in touch with as many people as needed as you kind of go through your list of potential candidates to fulfill that. People don't get back to us timely. And the best way to really ask somebody to be part of a PTA is to do it personally. You can never get enough personal contact anymore, because personal contact really gives the senses of an individual recognition, appreciation, and is really the most honest read of how people feel about people participating in the PTA. So first choice, your best contact, call them up, because they'll have questions. And people may be caught off guard when you call them, and they won't know what to say. They feel like they have to answer right then and there, but you really need to give them some space and time so they can formulate the question, so they can talk to their partners, their family members, and see if this is something that they can do and integrate in their life. So this is why we talk about the importance of the nominating committee. And the final piece of your work with that committee is once you have a slate, then you will present that slate to the association no less than 28 days prior to an election. So if you are asked to serve on the nominating committee, know that that is a special task and it is an honor to serve on it, and that you must take that position seriously. That you will find a team of people that come from all different backgrounds and all walks of life that will come together, collaborate, and put forward programs, recommendations to the PTA membership so that your kids can have the best opportunities available in their education.
And one thing that we keep saying over and over is the slate. And so we should probably define what the slate is. So the slate is basically the list of candidates that correlate. So who is going to be on the slate for president? Who's going to be your executive vice president, your vice president of membership, your secretary, your treasurer? The slate is basically just that list. So, excuse me. So we just want to clarify that for all of you.
There's an actual, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, as far as what you report, you will see later in this presentation, there's an actual nominating committee report form. So that's how you will present it and post it.
Yes. So when you have your meetings, they are set by the chairperson at a time, like Sue said, that's convenient for all the members, plus the principal or their designee. You should be taking notes. Did we talk about Mrs. Smith at the last meeting, or did we not get to talk about Mrs. Smith at the last meeting? Oh, let's look at our notes to see. Were we able to talk to Mr. Jones? Was Mr. Jones open to possibly serving as the auditor? So you need to keep records of what you're doing. These are confidential. They do not get presented in an executive board meeting or in an association meeting. They're merely to make sure that you guys are on track and doing the business that you need to do. When you're reaching out to potential candidates, we're going to show you some examples of this later, but you need to use all the resources available to you. Sending home flyers in the backpack, putting posts on your Facebook or your website. Like Sue was saying, definitely talking to people, getting up at an association meeting and explaining things. Or if you have open house or back to school night in that time frame, it just kind of depends on how things go, making sure that you are letting everybody on your campus know, going to the ELAC meetings and saying, you know what, now it's the time. If you want to serve on the PTA, you know, now's your moment to step forward and indicate that you're interested. During your meeting, like Sue said, you are not just going to write down the names of people randomly. You need to talk to them. You need to make sure they fully understand, what does the treasurer do? What does the secretary do? And you are able to interview them. You can ask them to apply with an application. We've said this multiple times, but it's really important. You need to try to find qualified candidates. Now, sometimes this means that Mr. Jones might have indicated that he really wants to be the treasurer, but Mr. Jones maybe doesn't have enough PTA knowledge yet because he has only been at the school for a few months. So maybe we want to ease him into it with a different position. Maybe we've talked about it and we know that his strengths maybe would be to start him out in the auditor position, or maybe he would make a great historian. And so we have to make sure that we're matching people to their strengths and that we're trying for the long term of our PTA. If we get him the PTA basics that he needs now, maybe next year or the year after, he'd be ready to take on that position. So again, sometimes you have to, as Sue always says, you have to move positions on the chessboard a little bit, but you don't do it without talking to them. So you would call Mr. Jones and you would say, we're so excited that you want to serve with us on our PTA. You know, we were looking at our list of candidates and right now it looks like maybe you might be better fitted to one of these other positions. Can we talk to you about it? And again, you know, that's acknowledging them, but it's also recognizing that maybe the treasurer has just completed their first year and they would like to continue for a second year and they've done a great job. So maybe, that's one of the reasons why you're trying to find him a different position. But you definitely need to make sure that you're trying to fit people to their strengths. And as we said, at least 28 days prior to the election, you are going to publish that slate. So Sue alluded to this a little bit before. When you're talking to people, you need to keep a couple of things in mind. And Sue and I are going to kind of ping pong back and forth on this. She already told you they have to be a PTA member for at least 30 days at the time of the election. So I cannot show up to the election meeting, plunk down my membership money, and say, I want to be the president. It doesn't work that way. We've already talked about they need to understand the purposes, the basic policies of the PTA, and really fully believe in the mission to positively benefit the lives of children and families. Hopefully, they've done something on your PTA before, even just a chair position or volunteered with you. The elected board, as Sue said earlier, should have some PTA knowledge. So we love new parents too, but if you're going to be in one of those really key positions, if you're going to be the treasurer, if you're going to be the president, if you're going to be the executive vice president, we really hope that you've served somewhere on the PTA so that you have some sort of a basis for what we do and how we do it.
It's important to understand the role of PTA and what it's meant to do beyond what you do at school. It is a national and state organization that has its grassroots based in the volunteerism at the school and in the community, but it also has a whole other side of it that we seldom see when we're busy in our schools, which is the advocacy piece. And so the depth of the organization goes back over 100 years. And so we talk about understanding the policies and procedures, and they're steeped in a history. And it's also important to understand, too, that they're steeped in the fact that it is a 501c3 nonprofit. You guys are volunteers, but you're running a business. And that is the business of providing enrichment and opportunities for students, but an organization that is also compliant with the California Corporate Code and the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board. So it's important that people who want to be involved in the PTA have an honest and realistic picture. And this is meant to really tell you that when you're working in the PTA, the skills that you learn through training, where there are multiple opportunities of that, no one is ever left to sink. These skills that you learn translate into the working world. There are plenty of parents who, from their work in PTA, have gone on into having their own businesses, going into the corporate world, becoming teachers, public servants. So it's an exciting organization to be a part of, but we have to have a realistic point of view that it isn't like you can show up whenever you feel like it. There always has to be communication, and it's important that when you accept responsibility in a PTA, whether it's an elected office like the president, secretary, treasurer, auditor, or you're even a committee chair for Red Ribbon Week or for a family night event, it's your commitment is important to the success of your PTA, and your child. It is very important to your child that when you participate in their world and at their school, because you are setting that model and example for them. So your attendance at meetings is important. PTA must be given a priority and a commitment on your top 10 list of things you do in your life. And when you're working in the PTA, you always must be fair and objective and concerned for the well-being and interests of the PTA. And when we say that, we mean the people. You know, when you make decisions in the PTA, it's about what is in the best interest of our students at Wiley Canyon PTA, at Leona Cox PTA, at West Creek PTA, because that's for whom you are working. So it's not about what you want as an individual, but about what we want as a collective in what is going to bring the greater opportunities and enrichment for our students and our families and our educators. So that aligns itself with, of course, the importance of effective teamwork, collaboration, transparency, communication, accountability. All of these things are important when you are looking for officers to serve in your PTA.
And this last one is one that Sue and I get questions about all the time. So just so you're aware, the term of office at the unit level for any position is 1 year. You can serve a maximum term of 2 consecutive years in the same position, which means that you could be the president 2 years in a row. You don't have to be, but you can be if you are reelected to a second term. Now, once I've done my 2 terms as president, I need to step out of that office. Does that mean I need to leave the PTA? No, it just means I have to be in a different position. So I could move to a committee chair. I could move to the treasurer. I could move to the parliamentarian, but I can't stay as the president for more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms. Now, people come up to us all the time and we hear this phrase, Sue, tell me if this sounds familiar to you, but what if no one else wants to do it?
Yes, that is very familiar.
So the thing that Sue and I always say to these people is, miraculously, someone will rise. But the reason why we don't want someone to stay in a job more than 2 years in a row is because, first of all, we don't want you to burn yourselves out. This is a big job, as Sue has said. We're in charge of a lot of different things. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. It's a lot of responsibility. And so we need to make sure that we're not burning our people out. The other thing is we want to include as many people as possible into our PTA. So if I were to say, I am going to be president the entire time that my daughter is here, so I will be our president for the next 7 years, well, that's not very friendly. That's not very welcoming. And it's not helping to get fresh and new ideas into our organization. So the bylaws are very clear. No more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms. Like I said, that doesn't mean that you have to leave the PTA. Just means you have to find a different position to serve in for at least 1 year before you think about going back.
So yeah, so you take a year break and you want to be PTA president again, well, then you can show your interest in that. Doesn't mean you'll get it, but anybody actually should really share if they're interested in something. That's important. When people come up to you and say, I'm interested in serving on the PTA, I'm interested in programs, take note of who that individual is during the school year. So when nominating committee comes up, that person's name can be submitted for consideration. And that should be ongoing to nurture future leadership in your PTA.
Absolutely. And sometimes they won't see the flyer come home, so they might not self-nominate, but you can make sure you say, oh my gosh, you know, Mrs. Smith, she did talk to me and she said she was really interested in programs. So make sure that you call her and let her know that the window is open for candidates. And
it's really, you know, it's a good thing if people volunteer and start off as chair people for different programs and events you have at your school, because that gives people who've been around a while the ability to see what people's strengths are and where they will be most effective when they want to move into a greater responsibility in the PTA. So starting off as a chairperson or part of a committee in planning a book fair or a hoedown or any of that really begins to give insight to all PTA members who may serve on a nominating committee, what the strengths of their volunteers are.
Awesome. All right, so when it's time to actually put people down on the slate, there are some things you need to remember, and this first one makes me giggle. It is not advisable to talk a reluctant individual into accepting a nomination. If you have to beg, borrow, and steal to get them to put their name on the list, my hunch is that their heart probably isn't really into it. Now, sometimes they might have had their heart set on a specific job, let's say Ways and Means. And like I said earlier, maybe there's someone still in that position who wants to run again. And so you're trying to suggest to them the programs vice president instead of the ways and means vice president. And so you might have to kind of convince them that programs is a great step into ways and means. But what you shouldn't be doing is hounding people who are like, nope, nope, not going to do it, don't want to do it, don't talk to me, and try to cajole them into doing it. Like Sue said, sometimes they're a little shocked when you contact them at first. So give them a chance to let the shock wear off, but don't put them on the slate just because you need someone on the slate if they're really reluctant about doing it.
Because what generally happens with that is that they do not want to do it. So therefore, a lot of the times, the PTA falls behind on filing taxes, submitting their charitable trust numbers, having an agenda put out timely, just the processes that we need to be doing to keep our memberships informed. And then there's no training. So it really weakens the effectiveness of a PTA when you have reluctant leadership.
Absolutely. And this next one is really important for everyone to understand. You need to get consent of each nominee to put them on the slate. So just because Mrs. Smith was the Ways and Means Chair last year and she is eligible to do it again, doesn't mean we automatically put her name down. We call Mrs. Smith, we talk to Mrs. Smith as a nominating committee and say, are you interested in continuing? We do not throw anyone under the bus. We do not surprise anybody. This is not something that is, oh my gosh, we'll get Norma. Let's just put her on the slate and this will be so funny. This is a serious thing. And so you need to make sure that you are getting consent before you place someone on the slate. And it's always best to do that during your committee meetings. Call them on the phone, put them on speakerphone, or if you've emailed them, read aloud the email that says, yes, I, Norma Smith, I'm interested in serving as VP of Programs. We've talked about this a lot, but they really do need to understand what's involved. How many times has someone sold this to you? And some of my people are going to laugh because this is something that we've heard. It's just one more meeting. You're already in a lot of, it's just one more. It'll be great. Well, there's more to it than that. No matter what position you are in the PTA, it's more than just one more meeting. And so we need to make sure that we're setting people up for success by letting them know exactly what is, exactly what we're going to ask of them. There are great resources on capta.org. There are very detailed job descriptions. Like I said, the bylaws have a smaller job description. They could go on National PTA's website, pta.org, and they could do a training. There are president trainings online that are free. That might not be a bad idea for someone you're thinking about, having them be the presidents. Have them take that. And if they're comfortable and willing to do everything in that online training, then this might be a good fit for them. And if halfway through they're like, oh, good gravy, I can't do this, then better to find that out early than, when we've already started the school year and now we need our momentum.
You can also decide as a nominating committee to interview candidates, have a time where people who are interested in certain jobs come in, where you ask the candidates all the same 5 or 7 questions. And that gives you a sense of, once again, in person, what the person is like, where you can see and hear the excitement about, wanting to be the treasurer or fear of being president because of all that is involved in the community and what that role entails. So you can choose to do something like that as well.
That's a really great point, Sue. Thank you. Another thing that's really important to make sure people understand is that training is crucial to being successful. And there are a bunch of different ways to get training. You guys right now are participating in one right now, webinars. There are in-person trainings that council and district offer. There are workshops that the state offers. There's the annual PTA convention. But it's really important that everybody acknowledge, and Sue mentioned this before, that training and knowledge is really crucial to making sure that you all at your unit have a very successful year. If only one or two of you are getting trained and the rest of the board is like, well, we've always done it this way, it makes for a very contentious situation. But if everybody who's coming in understands that there is a training component, and like Sue said, you're never going to be alone. We have lots of different checks and balances and helpers and assistants that will work with you to make sure that you are not flailing out there in the wind. But you need to make sure that everybody's on board with attending and participating in training.
Yep, we can never stress enough. Train, train, train. This train leaves the station as many times as you need to have it leave the station, but it won't leave without you.
Seriously, and those are my two mantras. Get more training, and when you make a motion, you say, I move. So those are the two t-shirts that I need to create. Get more training and I move. Those are my two catchphrases.
And then there's that catchphrase, no more, do more.
Oh, I like that.
Yes, I like that one too.
Ooh. All right. So let's say that your nominating committee has been meeting and they've been talking to people and your principal's been helping out, your teachers have been helping out, but we can't find anybody to serve in our historian position. We've asked, no one's interested. What do we do? Well, it's better to leave that vacant on your slate than to just say, oh, well, let's stuff Norma in there because, you know, she said she's interested. We'll just throw her in. You know, she said she wants to be on PTA, but she has no interest in historian, but we'll just throw her in there. Don't do that. Let it lie. Let it sit vacant. The night of the elections, you actually have to open every single position up to nominations from the floor. This is not optional. Even if your slate is full, you still have to ask, is there anyone in this room who's interested in being president? Is there anyone in this room who's interested in being executive vice president? You have to go position by position and open it up. If no one that day steps forward to be the historian, then it is declared a vacant position. That doesn't mean it goes away or the responsibilities stop. Like, you know, we don't need to do anything historian-like anymore. It means that the new board will meet and they will fill those vacant positions themselves. So maybe we'll start talking to the kindergarten moms at the kindergarten roundup to see if we can find someone. Maybe a new mom moves in that she was very active at PTA in her last school and now she's looking for a spot. Maybe there was someone who was working full-time and over the summer they started working part-time, so now they have time. But don't just stuff people into the slate because you feel like you have to have a full slate. All right, so Sue mentioned this fabulous form, and here's a lovely copy of it for you to see. This is the report of the nominating committee that must be posted at least 28 days prior to your annual election meeting. And the nominating committee will fill this out. At the very top, they put the name of the school and the date, and it will say the nominating committee met on. You can just put your final date on there, or you can list them all if you'd prefer. To consider all eligible candidates for the term of office. So for this coming year, it will be the 18-19. Oh my gosh, that sounds weird to say, but it will be the 18-19 term of office. And on behalf of the nominating committee, I present the following slate of officers. And then you'd write President, Mr. Jones, Executive Vice President, Mrs. Smith, Vice President of Programs, Norma, all those different things. I don't know why Norma doesn't have a last name, but she just doesn't.
But she was stuffed and thrown, so she must hurt, really.
I know, poor thing. My husband keeps texting me with hashtags about Norma now, so it's becoming a thing. And then everybody who sits on the nominating committee, including your principal or their designee, should sign at the bottom where the pink arrow is. And this is saying, we have spoken to all these people. We are confident that they can do the job. If there's a position that is not filled, you should still list it and then just have the name line be blank. This needs to get posted just like it is on your website, on your Facebook page, on the wall to your office 28 days before your election so that everybody has a chance to see who is on the slate. All right, so this is the golden moment. Sue is our membership guru. And one of the big parts of membership is making sure that we are looking at future leaders. So everybody who's on a PTA right now should be looking around and trying to figure out who's going to replace them. And I know that sounds sad, but we aren't going to be at the school forever. And so we need to start getting those new leaders excited and trained and get them participating. So we are going to talk to you about a couple different recruitment ideas. First of all, flyers, posters. The one on the right is from Leona Cox when I sat on the nominating committee, because that's my email right there, which is, you know, written on bathroom walls across the town.
That's PTA bathroom walls.
That's true. We sent this out to all of our parents in the backpacks. We had it translated English, Spanish. And then on our Facebook page, we had job descriptions for all of those positions so that parents could be very well informed about what exactly was required of them. And then if they were interested in serving, they just returned this tear off at the bottom. Yes, I want to serve on PTA and improve the lives of children. Here's my name. Here's what I'm interested in. And here's how you contact me. The one on the left, I actually just stole off Pinterest, but I thought it was a really great, you know, flyer that caught my attention. They have requirements and guidelines. They have an email address set up for all of their nominations. And it had on the bottom all the important dates. So here's where we're going to announce the candidates. That's at least 28 days prior to our election meeting. And then here we're going to have the board election. So I kind of like to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that so that they all understand. But those are two different ways of kind of marketing your PTA. And it really is a marketing, you know, nominating committee is half marketing and half finesse, trying to find the right skills and the right people to fit in the positions.
And the most important thing, too, to remember about PTA is that it needs to always have open arms and be welcoming. So when you go back to school in August or July or September, and you have your welcome back copies and you have sign-up sheets for all the different events you like to do at your PTA, follow up with a phone call. Follow up to see if the person who signed up to do room parent wants to be a room parent, or if they want to do the book fair or red ribbon week or be the gift wrap chair, whatever those activities are that you put out there, you need to follow up with phone calls. You need to always be on campus, smiling, welcoming, pleasantries. Those things go really far. It's when people don't see that, they begin to think that PTA is this clique and it's hard to get into and they don't feel welcome. And that's people who are English-only families, and those are English language learning families. You know, open arms is universal. So that kind of recruitment is constant every day. Doesn't matter that you just had a flat tire before you came to pick up your kid. You're still the PTA president, and you got to be smiling. You're still the treasurer. You got to be greeting people with you know, an open heart, open arms. Here's you have in front of you now our PTA nomination and application sample forms. And so you can choose to do this. And really what these kinds of tools do is really take out the uncertainty of your process. It makes the process more fair and equitable for the nominating committee and for the candidates who are seeking to become a part of your PTA. You can, you know, ask for references. You can do that because, like I said, you're working a 501c3. These are actually jobs that would translate into the business world once, you know, if your children grow up and you want to go back to work or need to. This will help you with that. So what have you been doing, Sue Solomon, for 25 years? This. And I wouldn't hesitate to put that on my resume. And then over here on the right, you have some sample questions. And so this gives you some insight into what people think about themselves, what they think they can bring to the PTA, what they believe are the concerns of PTA, what's in the future of PTA. You should constantly be recruiting through this kind of communication with parents as to the types of activities and programs they want to see. So when you have a new board that's elected in the spring, you can send out a survey through your newsletter, on your website, your Facebook, and say to parents, we're planning next year's activities for kids. What would you like to see happen through PTA at our school? And what skills or experiences can you bring to our school? Can you help out planning a career day? Can you be someone who speaks on career day? Can you speak on and read to kids on Dr. Seuss's birthday in February? So the more outreach you do and the more recognition of what parents have to offer, who, by the way, are your best resources for these things at your school, you will have a greater, stronger, more effective and successful PTA in meeting the needs of your school community.
And Sue actually introduced me to both of these forms. I had no idea that they even existed. And we were assisting a local unit with their nomination process, and they found this to be very helpful. They used it. They picked a couple of the interview questions and actually didn't use it as an interview, but they used it kind of on an application, and they asked each of the interested parties to answer the same, I don't remember, 3 or 5 questions. And reading their responses was really fascinating, and it offered them a greater basis for comparison because some of these parents they didn't know as well as others. So this is a really, really great resource for your nominating committee.
Highly recommend it.
Absolutely. So as you are going about recruiting, we can't say it enough, ask in person. Walk around your campus, talk to people. Hey, have you ever thought about being an officer on the PTA? Or, hey, I see you around here all the time. You're always at our events. You know, can we interest you in some other position other than just participant? Don't forget about new families. You know, we live in communities that have a lot of families that move around. And some of those families have been serving on the PTA for years and years and years. Let's bring in their expertise. Let's bring in their knowledge. And let's also don't forget about our kindergarten parents. As Sue said, when you're at that roundup, make sure that you're talking to them and telling them about all the exciting opportunities you have for them. We already said, are you asking your current officers if they're going to return? We don't just want to assume. We want to make sure that if they are eligible to come back, that we are at least giving them consideration to come back. So make sure that you're having that dialogue.
So, and teachers are a great resource. There is the T in PTA, that stands for teachers. They're a great resource as to parents and what kind of help and strength that they have. And of course, you can ask people who you know may be interested. So this is where membership comes in. Membership is an all year long campaign. Yes, you do the big push when school opens in the late summer, but we recommend that after you come back from the holidays, when you have new families that have moved into the area from somewhere else, that you conduct another membership campaign, not on the great scale that you did in July, August, and September, but certainly with as much communication as possible, because even parents who've been there for a while may finally say, hey, you know what, they look like they have a great time working in that Leona Cox PTA. I want to be a part of it too.
And we do have a good time in the Leona Cox PTA if you're interested.
I know. And being a part of it may mean for some parents, here's my $7, I want to be a member. And I know that the dues goes for resources that are bounced right back to your campus. I can only show up for meetings and vote on things. You know, so volunteerism in the PTA takes on many forms. But you have to constantly, when you're in the PTA, you are constantly inviting new members to join year round. And that's how, when you finally get to that point of looking for candidates for your slate, They're already members of the PTA because you've run that membership campaign year round.
Awesome. All right. So we have been talking about this for over 50 minutes now. So we're going to take you through a quick quiz just to make sure that you've been paying attention. So can the nominating committee fill one position with two people who are willing to share the duties of the office? So in other words, can we have co-presidents? Can we have co-treasurers? Sue?
No.
No, we cannot do that. We need one person who's going to put their name as the person primarily responsible. Now, you can get help from a lot of different people, but there has to be one person who has their name down as president and one person who has their name down as treasurer.
Can one person be nominated for more than one office?
Yes, they can, but they have to pick one. So let's say that Norma is nominated for, we had her on the slate for VP of Programs, but the day of the election, she also puts herself on VP for Ways and Means. And let's say she gets elected into Ways and Means. Well, now we need to take her off the slate for programs because she can't serve in both. So she can be nominated in every position if she so chooses to nominate herself for all those positions, but she can only actually be elected into and serve in one. All right, can a vacant position on the proposed nominating committee report be filled after the report has been submitted and posted?
Yes.
Yes. Sue already talked about that earlier. Sometimes things happen. People have to leave. They're leaving the school, they're leaving the state, their parent got sick, something happened. That's why the nominating committee meets from the day they're elected all the way through to that election. So they are allowed to come back together and fill that spot.
How does the nominating committee handle the acceptance of the nomination for a position after the report has been submitted? Heather?
All right. So they will, when they stand up in the election meeting, they will read a revised report that has the new nominee on it. So like we said, Norma moved away. Now Mr. Jones, we've talked to him. He's willing to fill in as VP of Programs. So when we read the slate, we would omit Norma's name and put Mr. Jones on there.
Okay.
Can an association member be nominated to serve a third consecutive one-year term for any office?
No.
No. We want to hold to that 2-year max in any position. And we've already talked about that at length. So really try to share the wealth, share the love, and let's not keep everybody in their positions for more than 2 years.
Here's one of my favorite questions.
Yes.
Can you be a nominee for office if you're on the nominating committee?
Absolutely.
No.
Yes, you absolutely can. And this has happened in lots of schools. As you're talking about positions and you're realizing, wow, you know, I have an interest in that. I think I would make a really good historian. You can nominate yourself. However, if there are multiple people who are being considered for that particular position, it is recommended that you recuse yourself, which means you step out of the room while that conversation happens about should we have Norma, should we have Mr. Jones, or should we have Heather as our historian. Then once the group has made that decision and picked the person on the slate, then you can come back into the room. Does that make sense, Sue?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. What if a person who wants to serve in an office is not nominated by the nominating committee? They're just out of luck, right, Sue?
Right, then they go off and they cry. No, they are empowered by themselves to nominate from the floor or be nominated from the floor on the night of elections.
Absolutely. And we really do want to encourage anyone who's interested, if they look at the slate and they say, oh gosh, you know, I really feel like I should have a place on that board, go to the association meeting and either self-nominate or get your best friend or your husband to nominate you, or your, you know, Norma, get Norma to nominate you. Anybody can do that.
Or her sister Edna. Right? May the nominating committee fill non-elected positions on the board, such as parliamentarian or other committee chair positions?
That is a negative. They may not. So there are certain appointed positions. It's usually the parliamentarian, and it could be the historian per your bylaws. Those are the job of the president to appoint and the board to ratify. And same thing with committee chairs. That is not something that the nominating committee can do. However, as you're talking to people, someone might say to you, I am really passionate about Red Ribbon Week. I love the program. My kid loves it. I'm really excited about it. There is nothing that prevents the nominating committee from giving to the board-elect a list of people who are interested in serving as committee chairs, but they just can't promise anyone that they are going to be given a chair or an appointed position. All right, so the next step is elections. And that is a whole nother big process, but we want to make sure that you get it right. And we have some really good tips for you. So coming on January 11th, 2018, we are going to have our Deeper Learning Series number 4 on elections. So we're going to take a little time off for the holidays, but we will be back in time for the election season with some really, really great tips for you. So we hope that you'll join us. If you can't join us live and in person, then this will be available online for you to see anytime you want. You can watch it in your pajamas if you so choose. But we are so thankful that you guys are here. I'm back. We're so thankful that you were here with us. I know that I saw Natalie and a couple of other people on while we were going. Thank you for bearing with us. I know this one was just a touch over an hour, but there was a lot of great information to share. Thank you so much, Sue, for sharing all your great information.
Thank you, Heather. And remember, everyone, we're here to serve. And if you have any questions about nominating committee or anything, council members are here to serve you. Contact us anytime.
Awesome. We would love to hear from you. And if there's a Deeper Learning Series webinar that you would like for us to do in the future, we would love to hear that as well. So you can email us and call us, text us, write it in the comments. We are available for you. So thank you so much for sharing your Wednesday night with us. And we hope that you have a wonderful week.
Good night.
Night.